Hong Kong has been known for being a thriving bastion of capitalism and democracy among Chinese authoritarianism. Take a look at Hong Kong today, however, and the population is fleeing in droves, the economy has been in decline for years, and China has completely hijacked its democracy. So what went so horribly wrong? Let's start in the year 1997. Britain had held Hong Kong as a colony for a century and a half, but now it was time to return it back to China. However, under different governments, Hong Kong and mainland China had become very different, and so an agreement was made to rectify this. Called One Country, Two Systems, this principle would allow Hong Kong to keep its current economic and political system while still being under China's rule. This agreement is meant to last for 50 years, but as you'll see very quickly, it's not going so well. The first sign came in 2003. For some background, Hong Kong basic law is much like a constitution. It's made up of many articles, one of which being Article 23. Pause if you'd like to read it, but it essentially says any treason, secession, sedition, subversion against the Chinese government is prohibited. Or in other words, any act of defiance against the Chinese government could lead to arrest. This article hadn't actually been implemented yet, and so in February 2003, a national security bill was proposed to enforce it. Hong Kongers could see that China was trying to undermine their freedoms. Thus, on July 1st of that year, over 500,000 people protested against the bill. As a result, its support within the Hong Kong government waned, and the bill was thrown out. As time went on, however, more concerning changes emerged. Like in 2010, when attempts were made to insert pro-China propaganda into schools, or in 2012, when legislation was proposed that would arrest those who disrespected the Chinese national anthem. While all of this was troubling, none of it caused as much of an uproar as what happened in 2014. Back in the basic law, Article 45's ultimate goal is universal suffrage, meaning everyone can vote or run for office. This hadn't been fulfilled yet, but fortunately, on August 31st, 2014, after years of fighting and promises for universal suffrage, China announced that all Hong Kongers would have the ability to vote starting in the 2017 election. As a result, tens of thousands of people flooded the streets to protest? Wait, what went wrong? Well, there was one major problem. After Article 45 talks about universal suffrage, it goes on to specify that the candidates for the presidency must be approved by the election committee, a group of powerful business elite and pro-Beijing members that notably are elected by other powerful people and not your everyday citizens. All of this meant that voters could only choose from a select few pro-China candidates. This was not true universal suffrage. Understandably upset, starting on September 26th, 100,000 people gathered in the streets and stayed there for months in protest. This event became known as the Umbrella Revolution, since protesters had to bring umbrellas to shield themselves from the police's pepper spray and tear gas. Major roads stood at a standstill until they didn't. 79 days after its start, police cleared out the last protesters. The movement had failed. It didn't make enough of an impact on Hong Kong's economy for the high-up leadership to care, and so, unfortunately, nothing would change, and another pro-Beijing president would be elected. 2019 would bring success, however. The president proposed an extradition bill that would have sent accused criminals to mainland China for their trials, a place Hong Kongers knew would not treat them fairly and often ignored human rights. You know the drill. Protest time. On the protest's largest day, up to 2 million people marched through the streets. Months later, the bill was trashed. And while this was a win, in the meantime, police brutality had increased, and so their demands did as well. Protests would continue until
Hong Kong looks set to put tens of thousands of its residents in a lockdown to contain a new outbreak of the coronavirus.
With COVID distracting the world and discouraging protesters from leaving their houses, it was time to do what the Hong Kong government had always failed to do. Remember Article 23? Well, just a couple months into the lockdowns, China was so eager to seize the opportunity that it bypassed the Hong Kong legislature and imposed this on the city. It was a national security law that finally fulfilled Article 23, meaning any negativity shown toward the Chinese government could now imprison you for life. COVID and this new national security law meant protests were silenced. With virtually no pushback, China could implement whatever policies they wanted. Soon, pro-democracy news outlets were raided by police and forced to shut down. More and more freedoms have become illegal. Arrests are much more common. Leadership has been made to be more and more pro-Beijing, and all of these trends are only strengthening. Hong Kong used to be a vibrant, lively city, full of optimism for a brighter, more democratic future. Today, hundreds of thousands are leaving. Many describe the city as feeling hollow, and for the foreseeable future, it seems China will only continue to strengthen its grip on the city. Luckily, there is one country that has escaped China's authoritarian grip, that being Taiwan. China has never been able to control Taiwan to this day, and this is for 3 main reasons, which I explain here. Thank you to my patrons and to you for watching.